Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up earlier today with Wayne Lloyd, who's the CEO of TraceSafe. They're in the wearables technology sector. We talked to him about their business last year, which is primarily focused on the track and trace, especially with COVID. That seemed quite popular, and where they're moving into the enterprise sector. They do have some government contracts as well. So fascinated to hear, how they started off, where they are today, and where they intend to go. And if you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation, on the company itself, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club. We also provide detailed analysis and company information on their market data. We've got training courses and also summaries of other interviews that we've done just to save you some time because we know you're busy. And if you want to join a thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, safe environment, free from trolling and abuse and judgment, which I think you might like, please go and join them at cruxinvestor.com/club. And we wouldn't mind your feedback either. So do give us a like if you like it and leave your comments below. We'll get back to you. And if you want to see precisely what we talked about today, do take a look at the description below. Wayne, how you doing, sir?
Great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Okay, so we are going to talk tech today. Favorite of mine. And we don't get too many tech stories on here, but the ones we get are pretty darn interesting. So we're about to hear about TraceSafe today. First off, so with the pleasantries, where are you?
We're in Vancouver, Canada.
Right.
Yeah, but really the company's actually based around the world. We've got office in Singapore, India, and down in Los Angeles.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, good stuff. And tell me, before we kind of kick off, what's your background?
My background, I come from financial services, worked for a family office doing some portfolio management, and eventually got involved in technology. Been working in tech, real specialty in technology M&A for the last 10 years.
Right. Okay. From that side of things. Okay, fine. Well, why don't we start? Give us a 1 minute overview of Trace and TraceSafe, sorry. And could you also clarify while you're doing it, you've got TraceSafe Inc. Is that different from TraceSafe?
TraceSafe Inc. and TraceSafe Technologies. So we do have an operating company in the United States, and there's a just for the way the company is structured, I'm the CEO of the parent company, and there's an operating team with a technologist led by a technologist named Dennis Kwan, who's incredibly talented guy, many years in the wearable space and embedded tech. Got it.
Okay. Right. Thanks for the explanation of the difference. But so tell us about the company itself then. What are you setting out to do?
Yeah, so TraceSafe is a wearables technology company, and they effectively started out in the med tech world doing infant tracking in maternity wards. So they built a really robust cloud platform that would manage that system from a security standpoint, a privacy standpoint, and obviously an accuracy and a performance standpoint. Started out in really the most demanding environment in the world with the most vulnerable customers in the world, which are babies. And so built a very impressive and bulletproof cloud platform and sort of total stack for the wearables. It's very impressive. They made a great name for themselves, transitioning that and helping out many governments around the world with the global pandemic that's been upon us, and now looking to all of the amazing new verticals that are emerging sort of in a post-pandemic world.
Okay, so during COVID, there's lots of new innovation that's come up during COVID, and in terms of testing and tracing and tracking and so forth. And I think a lot of those companies, people's view of them is that they're just temporary. They're here while COVID is here. When COVID's gone, don't need them anymore, right? So I'm keen today to understand perhaps what is it that you saw in the original technology, as it were, because there's a hardware component and a software component to it. And where do you think you can take this? So maybe if you don't mind describing how you got together with, Dennis Kwan, for instance, and who owns what.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting story. So like I said, they had built an incredible platform, really. And the platform was a cloud SaaS platform that really, there were a lot of players that came about inside the pandemic that were trying to sell sort of contact tracing equipment, cheap stuff from Alibaba sort of strung together. This is really a full-fledged cloud solution. So this is something where they have total control of how the wearables interact. This is a massive IoT play. They happen to just be focused on people and the things that move, and really the most valuable assets in your company. So what we saw was the ultimate scalable platform. And I think we've seen that we're doing about 15 million interactions per day on our platform, and growing all the time as we add new corporate customers, new government customers. And it was really that. So the SaaS platform and the software platform was really important. But even more important to that was the hardware system. The hardware system is really the key, and having a team that understands how to build and optimize these embedded systems from the silicon level and the firmware level. It's really vitally important to having these things successful. And so that was really the full package of what we saw. That's allowed the flexibility, and the cloud platform is really what's allowing us to move very quickly, very efficiently into these new verticals. And we can talk a little bit about those verticals if
yeah, well, let's talk about it, because technology companies sometimes get sucked down at the whole of worshipping the tech and not necessarily talking about the problems that they're solving, right? So I'm really keen to understand again what the current problems that are being solved are, and where you think this thing can go. So you've got a product suite at the moment, obviously, aimed at what?
So right now, obviously we're in the midst of servicing customers that are still sort of in the throes of the pandemic, and at the same time, our team is really focused on innovating and showing these next categories of products. We're deploying to companies with a contact tracing solution, but the devices that we're sending them are geared up and designed to do so much more. So there's so much more capability in the devices that we can start to unveil as the situation changes. I would say in the hospitality space, what you have is a situation where the biggest companies in the world are creating the best experiences, these premium experiences. And what that means is a lot of convenience and attention to detail. So for example, if you go to Disneyland, you can have a premium experience with their Magic Band, right? This is a wearable that interacts with the food and beverage service. It interacts with the ride. You don't have to stand in line so long, and on and on. And so Disneyland has this tech, and they obviously command the premium side of that entertainment market as a result. We are able to give some of those same experiences to other people in the market. So the wearable that we're deploying, that was originally deployed for contact tracing purpose, has many, many different radios in it, many pieces of functionality that you can unlock. These are things where, on a cruise ship experience, you might be able to unlock the room key door. So you have this single device, and instead of it feeling like, some sort of unnecessary safety device, it's something that gets integrated into your entire experience. So it's your, interacts with food and beverage. It's your room key, it's your payments, it's everything. So it really feels like that seamless, sort of elevated experience. In an enterprise context, it's a little bit different. You're looking at how are employers going to be using wearables to help make their employee experience a little bit better. People are going to be transitioning from work to home back to a workplace. There's a little bit of considerations around how to address, certain things. But ultimately, you want to make your workplaces better. You want to make them more engaging. You want to have happier workers, happier employees. And so these are devices that can sort of help understand safety issues. So when you're going to be interacting with at places that may be dangerous at your workplace, in a construction atmosphere or otherwise, when you may be, it can measure sort of things around your engagement, your productivity. So these are issues where there might be some problems where you don't have enough support at work. You're doing a certain job that is highly specialized, but it turns out you're actually doing a bunch of things that are not related to that sort of high impact thing. And so you'd be able to, employers are going to be able to measure these things bring in new support, help understand where their problems and bottlenecks are from a productivity standpoint. If you imagine sort of an workplace automation, the way that a Bosch factory might work in Germany, you can sort of that's a very, very controlled environment. But you can start bringing those workplace efficiencies to places that are not so controlled and start understanding that data at a very fine level. So that's what the wearable opportunity really unlocks for employers and workplaces. And we're really at the forefront of that. We're working with Lloyd, who has previously talked about the workplace wearable segment being a $60 billion segment. And they have a huge focus on rolling that out. So yeah, we've been excited to work with the Singapore government, excited to work with market leaders like Deloitte, and really kind of forward-thinking enterprises around the entertainment and hospitality business as well.
Yeah, I've seen that. It might be worth actually just explaining some of those use cases, because again, I think that the process that you've been through is quite interesting to me, because you've explained where you started and where and what's evolved from that. But you've also been able to generate revenue through this. And I think most sort of startup technology businesses struggle with the revenue component. Big on ideas, big on theory, and big on talk. But you've managed to deal with the cash component too, which helps going forward, right? Because it shows, one, you've got financial acumen, or commercial acumen, I should say, and that you understand how to get into markets. And really, then it's a case of, which I'm sure we'll get into, is, well, how do I redeploy this technology into other economic opportunities? So talk me through that little journey up until the point where you are now.
We've been very lucky in that we've been able to iterate on the product fast. Probably one of our biggest advantages is speed to market, listening to our customers, understanding what they want, really working closely to help define the products from a customer needs perspective, and then iterating very quickly. The reason we can iterate so quickly is because we own the entire technology stack. We own the cloud. We own all the firmware, all the embedded stuff. So we don't really have any roadblocks. The only roadblocks we have is our ability to execute. And luckily, we've been blessed with a team that is just so high performing when it comes to new product innovation, breaking down that product, delivering it, not just at a prototype, but at a very commercial level, and a commercial level that is a high volume. You look at some of our customer orders that we've been fulfilling, talking about 60,000 wearables. So these are really orders that are coming in at scale. These are not proof of concept things. These are some of the most demanding customers in the world, working hand in hand with the highest performing management consulting firms. So we're really a part of that entire story. I think the other thing we've been really fortunate to have is having this really mature technology, having some of these veterans in the industry has allowed us to attract some talent, particularly from the revenue side and sales side. So we've attracted industry veterans. Gord Zielstra is our chief revenue officer. Gord comes to us by way of SAP and others. He has just an incredible background and network for selling really B2B SaaS systems, complicated, multi-step deliveries, which is what we need because we're delivering a software component, we're delivering a hardware component. So there's really an on-the-ground deployment that's required. So these are complex deployments, but these are also highly rewarding financially deployments. And once you can get to scale, continually offering, the hardware is sort of a one-time purchase, but the software and the new opportunities you unlock as you move forward with the customer, that's where the real richness of the revenue comes in.
Absolutely. Tell me this, because again, I'm looking at the eye-catching bits, and one of the eye-catching bits was working with the Singaporean Ministry of Health, or the health department. I'm not quite sure of the phrase. When you start working with governments, money starts becoming a little bit easier to come by, typically. And those government contracts, what people seek, how did you manage to get in there so quick?
So we had a very experienced team in Singapore who has been delivering IoT deployments for decades. Really this industry's been around, since I would say 2013, 2014. We have some of the strongest people in that region working with us and working for us. the I would say it's really great to work with Singapore government and all the different agencies and even companies in Singapore. There's a great public-private partnership model that happens there where they're able to unlock a lot of innovation and sort of de-risk a lot of these projects for the Singaporean companies. And it's an incredibly powerful model. So you're totally right. We've worked with, at the agency level, which obviously is a complex and highly demanding customer. Singapore government is known as being one of the most technologically innovative regions, countries, governments, and so they are an incredibly valuable and have high standards for what's delivered. So that's been really great. And what that means is that once you've delivered to a customer like that has such high standards and is known for, has such a great reputation for innovation, the other contracts sort of come quite naturally because a lot of the due diligence and a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of those other countries sort of regionally look to Singapore for leadership. And if it passes that test, then, you have a much easier time. And that's what we've done. So we've done a lot of the hard work and heavy lifting early on, working with those customers with incredibly high standards, and that's paying off dividends now because we've been able to define the product correctly, and we have really great flexibility to deliver the solutions that are required.
Right. Thanks for that. And I agree with you. I think that almost like the Singapore government has done the hard work for you because it was good enough for them.
Well,
it's good enough for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So we're talking about the Internet of Things, and we're talking about the Internet of Places. And that's about getting data to make better decisions mm-hmm. which may save companies, countries, money and time and all of those wonderful things. Where do you think people fit into this? Because you've talked about different ways of deploying the technology, we'll call it for now. On your wrist, in your vests, on hats, on whatever wearables people are being asked to wear. It kind of feels like a sort of one-way street at the moment. It's all about the employer rather mm-hmm. than the individuals. Are there applications that you see where you're around safety or wellness, where the people wearing these things wear them willingly rather than as a kind of captive audience?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we look at all the ways that technology's enhanced our lives. And, really what we want to do is make people's jobs easier. And I think that these wearable technology pieces, it's really about a connected worker story. So, you're connected to different pieces of equipment, different pieces of and places in your workplace. And it's really about, we do overemphasize the story about, productivity and having a high ROI because there is a commercial consideration to be made about why you put these in. And that's important. It's really important in a capitalist society to be constantly providing efficiencies and moving things forward. But from the perspective of someone, I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone that feels that, there are costs and benefits to everything, but people would be very reticent to give up any of the technology advancements that we've had in the last, 10 or 15 years, whether it's from the smartphone or anything. And so I do think that these are devices that are going to make people happier in their workplaces, more fulfilled, make their jobs easier, and more efficient to do, and just lead to overall more fulfillment in the workplace. I think employee, well-being in the workplace is a place that employers are focused right now. And these are technologies that are going to make the pie bigger for everyone overall.
Okay. Well, I guess it's down to the companies themselves to also communicate that. Let's talk hardware, software, okay? Because right now we've been talking a lot about the hardware components, how people, where your software sits, and right now that's stuff that you're building, you're in control of. But eventually, the money's got to be in the software, right? Because there are lots of wearables out there, and if you can start interacting with some of those wearables and be the control system, that's much more attractive than perhaps producing hardware. Because, well, first of all, better margins, right?
Well, the hardware is largely commoditized. I think that if you look at it, there's very mature ecosystems that we interact with. Now, obviously, we're sort of kind of top of the food chain when it comes to developing custom plastics, developing all this stuff from taking a fundamental approach. But still, the supply chain and the world of wearables is a very mature stack. Where you can really add value is in the software layer. And so that software is really about creating a seamless link between the hardware and that cloud layer. So I don't want to discount the hardware entirely, because it's a part of that connection is a part of the software story as well. But the software is really what allows you to unlock a lot of the data, a lot of the functionality, a lot of the things that people really care about. You have hardware deployed, but a lot of the control systems, a lot of the things that actually make it run and add value do live in that software layer. At the beginning of our journey, we were sort of about 20% of our revenues were from software and about 80% of our revenues were from hardware. Now, we've moved to a point where our typical contract is about 50% software and 50% hardware. And we see a trajectory where we're going where, the hardware component is going to go to about 20% and the software component is going to go to 80%. And I can see a future where the hardware component becomes something that is just part of the offering and it's a free piece. There's no friction to gaining new customers. We take that layer away entirely. We're not there yet, but we're definitely on that journey, and we're making strides every day. And we're about 50-50 now, which is a huge improvement, and working towards that 80-20, 80% software.
Yeah, it's a model. It's not a new model. It's in that sense, but it'll be interesting to see which route you go down. Because we've kind of seen it with headsets. People give you the headset for free, but you pay for the music, all that kind of stuff. And I think people are used to buying and interacting in different ways, but it's got to be good for you to kind of focus on the software for sure. You mentioned a number earlier, which is a very big number now, and I suspect will be getting bigger, which is this 60 billion number put in by Lloyd around wearables. Is that where we are today, or is that a future?
No, I think they think we're going to get there in 2024, 25. So it's a process, right? They are focused on working with companies to help specify what they really need, and then working with partners like us that helps sort of deliver on that promise, right? We are the platform that really delivers on the premise that this is going to make people more efficient, create better experiences, and so on.
Right, but you as a business, you as the CEO, need to be very clear about what business you're in. And we've talked about a few moving parts today in terms of hardware, software, different applications, different data sets, etc. But do you know what business you're in? Because if you know what business you're in, you can know the size of that market and how you go about capturing as much of that as possible. So how are you defining it?
So we define ourselves as a kind of a connected worker, future of work play. And that is really where we are. Now, the future of work, it bleeds over into the hospitality business, because how you deliver a hospitality experience to your customers is part of how that work happens, from delivering the experience. And so that's where we sit. We feel like this is a multi-year, perhaps decade-long trend to play out, to fully sort of capture the market. And we feel there's no company better positioned to capture that market than TraceSafe, because they do have that sort of 10-year track record of delivering these solutions at scale. So yeah, that we're definitely a future of work, connected worker play.
Right, which would be a new term for most people. And I suggest a new term for your sales team to go and sell into, whoever they're selling into. So I'm interested in, what are those baby steps that you're taking to kind of get to where you want to be? Like, what are you tackling first? We get the kind of track and trace bit now, but you're saying that's step number one for you. So how do you see this progression, or say over the next couple of years? Where are you targeting your money, your time, your attention?
So I think what it starts with is the product capabilities. So if you look into the hardware side, what can this wearable do, right? What radio sets does it have? Is it capturing information about motion? Is it capturing information about location? So that's the most important thing, I would say, as a first step, which we've taken. And we're going to talk about some of our product launches in the very near future, the capabilities. I think, it's not a surprise that we're working on motion capture technology that sort of can help understand what's going on with the wearable user. It's a very common technique, but then how we move that data into the software layer, into the cloud, and sort of crunch all that data and start understanding some of those business insights is probably where, it's not a step two necessarily. It's all part of the same trajectory, but that's really where the value will be unlocked. A lot of devices can talk to you about how many steps you've done during a day, but not a lot of devices can give you sort of more deep insights about where you went, what you did, how it could be improved, and all those sorts of things. So going back to our conversation, the software layer is really what unlocks a lot of the business intelligence and opportunity sets.
Okay. So looking at your share chart, I think people got very excited during COVID about what you were going to be able to do. And it came off a bit towards the end of the year, but you're sort of back up, at or slightly above where the peaks of last year. But the story's changed. People's understanding of what you're trying to do has changed.
Well, the market's changed. The demand, I would say the demand part of the market has changed. We listen to our customers, I think, is the most important thing. And when there's a market, you sell into it. And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing the market transition from, okay, we needed a quick solution to be deployed. And now what we need to know what the future of work looks like for our people going forward. And how do we, now that we have these wearables in the workplace, what can we do with them? What's the next kind of phase of what it is? And this is where it becomes really exciting, because the devices, the cloud, the software becomes a platform to build on. And you could sort of, as long as you're listening to your customers, you're getting their feedback, you're incorporating that into our product, you're going to be able to sort of, because we've delivered the most devices out there, we have the most customers, we have a lot of these things, we have a lot of advantages when it comes to iterating on the product and making it better and being ahead of the curve. So I think we take that as our strength, and we're going to be definitely doubling down on that going forward.
Right. Okay. You're an ex-finance guy. You're a nearly $50 million company, but it's kind of time to grow up a little bit now in terms of the way that you approach the marketplace. So you're going to, where are you listed at the moment? Which exchange?
We're listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange, and we've had really great luck as far as our financial partners, our supply chain vendors, that we've been able to be very capital efficient to deliver some of these huge sizable orders, right? I think going forward, as we start to gain visibility into our contracts and what happens, we're going to need quite a bit more capital bandwidth to execute on the vision. And so we've always taken a fairly, we want to make sure that we have relative certainty about what our plan is that we're able to execute on before we go and do it. We don't have a strategy of just let's raise a whole bunch of money and then try to figure it out later. We want to have very highly targeted, surgical opportunities that we can go after and exploit that are going to be value creating for shareholders. So that's probably the next step of our journey. We're still in a very comfortable growth cycle as far as our current capital partners and setup. But the opportunities are getting much, much bigger.
That's my point. You're gonna come up, have your back against the wall at some points if you don't kind of sort the financing out. So one, the ability to go and get capital, because with hardware, sometimes you just need a lot of capital to kind of move things along. And to be seen in the right vein, you're going to have to be on the right exchange, because I know you guys are all over the world. Absolutely. But you're gonna have to. Like, that's what I mean about it's slightly growing pains, as it were. You need to be viewed. The optics needs to look right, so you're conscious of that.
It's a very great point. I mean, that's been a topic of conversation internally and with some of our stakeholders, is about getting to an uplisting situation, moving to a more mature market where we're going to be able to expand our capital bandwidth easier. And so we're actively looking at that right now. So I think, we have big things happening in the background, and we'll be able to announce some of that stuff in the near future.
Well, I think we had a stack of questions sent in from all over the place, and I think if there's any frustration to this, it's about the lack of information which is coming from the company. Because maybe you can or you can't. But is that something that we can see more of in terms of understanding the revenues and where the deals are, which industries, which companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been fairly transparent about, I think one of the things that we see in a junior market is that, people talk a lot about, the revenue factor and the names of the customers. And, so we see we see a bit of that in the promotional aspect of, in some people. And the reality is, when you're dealing with governments and you're dealing with, multi-billion-dollar enterprises, a lot of the time there's a confidentiality consideration, and there's also a consideration around pricing transparency, and particularly B2B software, that you don't want to give off. And so, we're very transparent, continuously reporting company. It's very easy to see our margins and our revenues in our financial statements. We will be, we're hoping to move to a more mature disclosure environment around, our quarterly numbers, continually announcing that. That's something that we're working with our legal and our finance team on.
Right. And what sort of mix of shareholders are you looking for? Because with retail comes the fervor, the excitement, and the buzz and the liquidity, but it can be quite time consuming. So what kind of split are you looking for? Because the institutional gives you some kind of solidity, maybe access to capital, and again, that kind of matureness. So how do you deal with that when you're a sort of smaller company?
Yeah, I think we have a great shareholder base right now, and the more people we can attract to the opportunity that can understand what our mission is and how we're executing, the better. So whether that's more retail investors, everyone's welcome. Whether it's some institutional investors, I think a lot of the institutions are going to start waking up to the story and sort of realizing that this is an important trend happening in the market, and that we're a great proxy to play that from. But it's over time, the shareholder base will mature with a lot more institutional sponsorship, I believe.
Right. And are you considering the complete gamut of options available to you in terms of upscaling the exchange? Because you've kind of got these big tech bubbles in the States, London, Frankfurt, even Singapore, but Canada's not really known for that, is it?
No, but I mean, you've had some incredible homegrown Canadian technology success stories in Shopify, and others. So, there is a great tech scene here. There is a supportive shareholder base for technology companies, people trying to understand these things. Obviously, it's known more for the resource market, but I'm Canadian. We have a Canadian, quite a few Canadian team members. So we think that the Canadian capital markets are still a great place to do a technology company like this. And but there's a certain point where you may outgrow that market, and we're very cognizant of that and looking at what's available.
Perfect. Wayne, appreciate your time today. Sounds like you've got a pretty good thing going on there, and we're delighted you came on our show and told us all about it. Any thoughts that you want to leave people with? What should they be looking forward to?
Yeah, I just think watching the next few quarters. I think people will be very pleased with the progress we're making. The customer mix that we've gone after is very high-end, premium set of the market, and I think I'm really proud of the way the team's executing, both a sales perspective, landing some of the biggest customers in the world, and from a product perspective, being able to iterate and move the product very fast, stay ahead of our competition, and deliver for our customers.